What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tru Element 78 in the building with.
Your one and only reigning, defending Mondo Lucha Hall of Famer, the X-Man, Xavier Mustafa.
And this is the natural Chris Black reminding you to just say no.
To him winning any championships from Devin August. But anyways, today we are here. This is a very special episode. As usual, you're with us here on the YouTube. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, hit that bell, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you're notified whenever we upload new episodes. And we are here to discuss another episode of Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring. Here to critique the episode entitled Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abrams story. So
Before we get into it, we just got to let our listeners know that they should be listening to this episode in nothing but cowboy boots, like I am right now.
Well, they gotta have on cowboy boots. They gotta oil themselves up with baby oil. They gotta wear some blue jeans. Make sure you got a lot of white substances around you and a lot of women.
In a window.
We're gonna get into all of that. For those who don't know, Herb Abrams was the creator of a wrestling federation called UWF back in 1990. And no, this is not the same UWF that Bill Watts had, that he transformed Mid-South Wrestling into from the 80s. This is a completely different beast. So, Herb Abrams was a very eccentric guy with a lot of money. In this episode, you have people just outright saying, hey, yeah, I got a phone call. They're like, there's this money mark out west. He's paying a lot of people to come in and wrestle. So I'm going to go out there and see what's going on. Getting into all of that, though, or before we get into all of that, in the UWF, like I said, it was started by Herb Abrams in 1990. He started bringing in a lot of talent that had been let go by the WWF and other people who were leaving the territories that had been big in the territories. A couple of those names he had brought in. He had Captain Lou Albano. He had Cactus Jack, otherwise known as Mick Foley. He brought in Bruno Sammartino to do commentary with him on the television show that they had, which was called the Fury Hour on television. I don't know how he got this on television. We'll get into how they had the production values of a wet paper bag. But he brought in a lot of talent. On this episode of Dark Side of the Ring, he brought in a guy named John Arezzo, who was a wrestling historian. And he said what ended up actually happening and how this ended up getting set off is that he would do these wrestling fan conventions on the weekends. And Herb Abrams showed up to one of them, and they got to talking, and he realized, hey, maybe I got a lot of money. Maybe I should try and start my own wrestling company. I'm a wrestling fan. Going to these conventions, he was getting to meet a lot of these guys and get in their ear, letting them know, hey, I can pay you this. We're going to start up this wrestling company. You want to be a part of something special. So a couple of the people that he brought in that were homegrown, he brought in Rick Allen, otherwise known as Sonny Beaches. He brought in B. Brian Blair. He brought in Wild Things, Steve Ray. And the interesting thing was that this was a wrestling company started by a guy that had no experience, had never been in a ring, and had never wrestled. Is that an ingredient for disaster, in you guys' opinion?
Absolutely.
Oh, no, that's the average wrestling company nowadays, independent wrestling company. All you need is some money and a couple of contacts, and you can start your own wrestling promotion, folks.
Good Lord. Yes. Big mistake. Recipe for disaster.
Right. What do you guys think about the idea of him going up to these guys as just a fan, no experience in the wrestling business, just a guy with a lot of money, making promises to these guys about starting up this federation?
Well, the thing is, they should have just treated him like a money mark and shouldn't have put all their eggs in one basket. This is going to be a fly-by-night operation. That's what money marks do. You have to know about the business to be able to function correctly in the business. And if you've never taken a bump, if you've never managed, if you've never booked, what the hell are you trying to do starting your own wrestling fed?
I mean, from a wrestler point of view, at the end of the day, I got to pay bills, so they come a calling, I'm going to answer.
Yeah, but see, you got one time for the check to bounce. and it's your ass. Like there is
Oh
no.
yeah, we're gonna definitely get
Yeah,
into that.
no.
Before we do get into that, I just got one more question on this topic right here. Have you guys ever worked for Money Mark?
Have we?
Well, by my count, I've worked for him once. Well,
any
that's just one of them because there's been several.
any stories you can tell, or who it was, or what company, or you don't want to throw them under the bus? They still operating?
Some of them, no. There's a couple of them that are hanging in there. Um, I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus, but there's a particular one that I've worked for a little bit, and I mean they are like they should know that these talents are using you. Like
Exactly.
you are paying for them to come in basically so they can be your friend, so you can take pictures of them. Like, hey, I'm hanging out with this person. Um, yeah. I mean, I will give that person some credit. I mean, I think they've learned a lot about the business through these people, but ultimately they just look really bad in the process.
Yeah, especially with like the guys, well, smart guys, they set a price for themselves and they stick to that. You get a money mark that offers you, hey, I want you to do this show. More often than not, you're going to double or triple your asking amount because they'll pay it.
What's the first sign of a Money Mark when they approach you? Like you said, they'll call you and you'll double your price. Like, how do you know what they are besides word of mouth? Is there a way to just tell by the conversation that they decide to have with you, or how they approach you about it?
Well, pro wrestling's a network. So if you've never heard of them, that's sign number one. Yeah, how the way they talk. Um, I don't know. I think like I don't know. A standard question for people is like, how long you've been in the business. That's like the litmus test for me.
I mean, they should be asking you about your history too, even if maybe well, maybe not. Maybe if they've actually researched you, they may not ask you that question. But I mean, I've been on the phone with people, and they're like, "Yeah, so we're gonna start this big promotion. This is gonna be our first show, and we're gonna have hopefully about 2,000 people, and this and that." And we're just like, "Oh, okay, all right. You got everybody's money when we first get there. Okay, all right, cool."
Mustafa, let me ask you a question now. This guy might not be a stereotypical money mark because number one, I guess you need to have money, but he who should not be named. Would you categorize him as a mark trying to get into the business?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Maybe
And
we should
even
bring who should not be named onto the show.
we should. I mean, here's the thing about him. All right, I understand you're a man with a dream, but you got to do the work. You know what I'm saying? You just can't just wake up one day and say you're gonna start a promotion and you're gonna be successful and you're gonna be competing with the WWE and WWE fears you and all this. Like you just can't do that. If he was the type of person that'd be like, you know what, I'm going to get with this promoter and learn stuff about running the business, or I'm going to learn how to be a wrestler and be properly trained and stuff like that. That's different.
But
But
like if you're getting into the wrestling business, you can come to a promoter as a mark wanting to learn, but you're gonna have to earn respect. You're gonna have to actually pay your dues before you get respect in this business.
Right. And one more thing, just because of that reaction, Xavier Mustafa, have you ever had a talent that you wanted to bring in, kind of treat you like you were a money mark, or try to take advantage of you?
oh yeah. Oh yeah, and I'll be willing to throw this person under the bus. Too Cold Scorpio, piece of shit.
Damn, tell us
God
how you really
damn.
feel.
I was there
Yeah,
for
I
that
know about
show.
that.
It's funny because a lot of people, and I always feel like I'm the oddball or something because you hear all these people they say, "Oh yeah, he's a great guy," blah blah blah, yeah yeah. Our interaction with him was absolutely horrible, and it started with his agent, and his agent was terrible, and it just ended up being a big mess when it was all said and done.
Didn't keep to his promises, the agreement.
Like it's funny, like like we've worked with MVP, we've worked with
Nonsense.
Ron Simmons. We worked with Leo Rush. We've worked with a lot of people who,
ACH.
in my opinion,
Animal.
I was expecting for them to be assholes, and they were like the coolest people like ever, especially MVP. MVP. When we brought in MVP, there was a problem at the hotel. There was a problem getting somebody to pick him up because they had a whole bunch of stuff going on that morning. He had every right to get to the show and not be happy. He was cool with everything, worked everything out. We got everything fixed. He was cool with it. Got to get off the plane, take a nap, wake up, get ready, and come to the show.
All
He
right.
should have been a dick, but he wasn't. You know what I'm saying? So we really appreciate that. MVP, if you're listening, if you give me a job, that'd be cool. But
He is reported he is starting a stable, I guess. So, well, all right. So anyway, so Money Mark, Herb Abrams started UWF by basically talking to a bunch of guys at these conventions. Guys kind of realized what it is. I think a lot of these guys really did realize it was going to be like a fly-by-night type thing. So they're like, well, I don't know how long this is going to last, but as long as the checks are clearing, I'm there. And also, this was also around the time of, Eastern Championship Wrestling was still a thing, but it wasn't ECW just yet. But I guess you can kind of say that this was kind of the bubbling up of showing that you could kind of build something from the ground up, because if you go back and watch these television episodes that they had, the production was the shits. There was no consistency. None of that had been planned out. It was literally a guy with a dream, knew some people with cameras. All the cameras had different qualities. Every arena looked different. Like it was just the shits. And like Xavier Mustafa and Chris Black had said, he had no experience in the industry. He just knew it as a fan. But even being as a fan, I don't understand how you could book shows as bad as he was booking. And I like this episode for a lot of the reenactments that they did, but they left out a lot of information and a lot of examples of things. They kind of burned through a lot of information in this episode very fast. So there's some information like how basically giving examples of his booking. Like he would have, I think they said that he didn't have an actual pinfall on his television show until like the 5th week or the 4th week of the show or something like that. It was always a disqualification or a count out or some fuckery type ending.
What the fuck?
Like, I don't know how you could run a wrestling promotion like that or think that you could hold people's interest.
I wonder if it was one of the things because I've seen it happen. I've been a part of it happening. Sometimes you get to these shows that are ran by Money Mark, and the wrestlers are like, you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Well, that was also the thing, and we're going to get into that because Mick Foley said that a couple of times because Mick Foley is featured in this episode. So yeah, like I said, he had all the talent in the world. When you look at the roster that he had built around himself, there was no reason that he shouldn't have been able to compete with Vince McMahon besides money, because obviously, even at this time, I guess you could say Vince McMahon had unlimited money or at least unlimited reach to get people to come in with the guarantee of the money being there because of the fan base that was already built in, versus Herb Abrams, who had an uphill climb and he had money. And we don't really know what he was paying these guys, but obviously it was enough for them to be happy with, and they came from the WWE, so it couldn't have been pennies. It had to be a little something. Plus, they weren't near any other territory. They were always out on the West Coast doing these things, even though they were doing shows in New York as well. But when you just look at it, it was just kind of crazy. A couple of things that he did from the beginning that should have let people know that this guy was kind of loony or out of his mind was that he announced Blackjack Mulligan as the booker, and he was incarcerated at the time. He had set up an angle during the press conference or the announcement conference between Dan Spivey and B. Brian Blair that not many people were necessarily aware of. And then he had also announced Bruiser Brody as the top star, even though he had been dead for a year.
See, now that's some Mark shit right there. Because they didn't have instant messenger where they can pass news back and forth fast enough. But I'm pretty sure if you were in the wrestling network, you knew Bruiser Brody had been killed.
It almost sounds like he was doing the same thing that they did at in Saudi Arabia, and they're like, "We want the Ultimate Warrior, we want Yokozuna." Maybe this isn't as bad as that because those guys had already been dead for like 20 years versus this is like he died a year ago.
I mean, would you classify the Saudis as money marks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ultimate money marks. That's the end game of money marks. Because that's not just a person, that's an entire country putting their money on professional wrestling. But
and Vince is treating them like money marks.
So it is what it is. And speaking of Vince McMahon, one of the things that Herb Abrams actually did was he went to Vince McMahon to basically offer Vince McMahon to the East Coast, like you run the East Coast and allow me to expand your brand on the West Coast. And they said Vince McMahon laughed him out of the room, basically.
Well, okay, so is it true that this dude, I know he's short as hell because I saw like footage of him, but was he really 5'0"?
Yeah, they say he was like 5'0", cowboy boots and blue jeans everywhere he went.
Just the visual of that, Vince McMahon probably laughed his ass off the minute he walked into his office.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he thought that he's like, who's ribbing me?
Yeah.
This is a rare, right? Who did Briscoe put you up to this? Did Patterson put you up to this?
But you know what? You know what? You got to give him credit. That man must have had a pair to walk up to Vince McMahon and be like, yeah, I'll promote your shit for you.
Yeah, they said the way that he finessed this meeting was like spectacular, like through like his little contacts that he basically tricked the WWE front office into getting this meeting, because they said he was very persuasive, very charismatic, as you would say, and you can definitely see that in the emotion on the people's faces in this documentary as they talk about this guy, and we'll definitely get into it, especially the end of the episode.
You know what? Right away, I marked him as a con artist. He's a con man. As soon as they started saying that he had Bruiser Brody and Blackjack Mulligan as being the booker, I'm like, as soon as he started lying like that, I'm just like, okay, dude sound like a con artist.
Aren't all promoters con artists? Xavier Mustafa.
Yeah, but you know, there's certain levels and degrees to that.
There are, but also, you know, you got to have good soldiers, and I don't think like people knew what it was. So if you know what it is, are you really being conned? Well, I guess it's on the talent end. Maybe some of the fans, but the fans knew Bruiser Brody was dead. They likely knew Blackjack Mulligan was incarcerated. So I don't know. I'll just be like, this guy is a lunatic. This guy is out of his freaking mind. So I don't know, but you got to kind of agree that like maybe he was not, like I said, I wouldn't. I'm stuttering like crazy. But yeah, I guess he was a con artist or whatever. I guess you could classify it like that. But then, because they're usually charismatic and charming, they said pretty much his charm, Vince McMahon was the only person who saw through this. Like, they said he could get anybody to pretty much do anything that he wanted except for Vince McMahon. And they said that, pretty much hurt his soul after that.
You even pointed out that all these people are crying over him. It's just like, this dude fucked y'all over and over. And why are you crying for him?
Cult of personality.
Like, dude's an ultimate con man.
Well, you see the same thing with people from ECW. How long did Paul Heyman go without paying those guys, and they still went out there and performed for him and did all of these things for him?
And Paul Heyman might be a reformed con artist, but that was some con shit back then. And again, I don't understand how you can work and not get paid. We discussed that about Impact when our podcast had just started. I don't understand how people still did that shit. So if you're not paying me, I'm not working.
So have you ever
Yeah,
worked? So
exactly.
you never worked for a promotion where they may have promised you some money and the money didn't come through, and did you just never work for them again after that?
Depends on the circumstances. Sometimes the gate is low or whatever.
Well, looking at the UWF, he was promising
Yeah.
them 2,000 people and 500 people were
But
showing up.
okay, I'll give you one. But if it becomes a normal thing, then no. Like this some bullshit.
Right, because
Well, it
they
depends on what that one is too. You know, if that one is me getting in my car and driving all the way from where we're at now to Florida, and then I get there, you're talking about some, oh, here's $100. No, we gonna have some problems. You know, but if I drive, you know, maybe an hour away, the gate's a little down or something like that, you know what? You know, take care of the veterans and I'm good. Or, you
Yeah.
know, work out something.
yeah,
But don't try to sneak out the fucking back door though.
right. And that was the thing they
You
said. They
know.
said the big names got paid, and I guess we can get into that. So his heart was broken by Vince McMahon turning down his offer to basically run the West Coast, and letting Vince have the East Coast or whatever. And so he set out on his goal to destroy Vince McMahon. He would run angles that would take shots at Vince McMahon on his show. One of the major things that he did was he brought in Andre the Giant as a spectacle, and Andre did some work with them for a couple of weeks. I didn't like how he did it on the episode where they made it seem like Andre the Giant made one appearance. He made multiple appearances, but he never wrestled there. And then Vince McMahon basically hired Andre the Giant back and brought him back over to the WWF, which also made me wonder what kind of contracts was Herb Abrams doing, or like, hey, yeah, I just pay you to come in and like you don't have to just work here exclusively. Was he doing the whole
Okay.
AEW thing?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because it was about at this point in the program where I was just like, this is sounding mighty familiar. You have a guy who's got money who wants to start a wrestling promotion. He gives the boys creative control, and they are slowly taking cheap shots at WWE. I'm just like, this sounds very familiar. But of course, Tony Khan is no Abrams, so he's not going to be all cocaine. Well, I don't know what he do. So
I know he does them numbers. I know he
right.
does them numbers.
But at least he's knowledgeable of the business. You know what I'm saying? He's no idiot.
Right.
Still a fan, still a mark.
He's
Not say that.
He's a businessman.
Yes, he's a businessman first, a mark second.
Hey, but Khan is also in his name.
Right.
So who's playing who?
Bitch.
Who's conning who? But so damn, you and me lose my train of thought now. So yeah, he brought in Andre the Giant, and one of the things they said is that the big stars, Bruno Sammartino, he got paid. Andre the Giant was getting paid when he was bringing in these big names. They were getting paid. It was the people lower down in the cars, the Wild Things, the Brian Blairs, the Rick Allens. They were the ones not getting those checks. The people on the production crew, they weren't getting those checks because those gates weren't coming through. And we'll get into it a little bit later, how he was actually paying these people. But one of the things was a wrestler by the name of Marty Yesberg. He had heard about a money mark out in California who was putting together this organization. So he decides to go out there and see what's up. And so he says in the Viceland episode that Herb puts him up in this really nice hotel, ritzy hotel and everything, like room service, and the room is huge, and he thinks that it's his room and all this different type of stuff. Then he gets a knock at the door, and it's Herb. And Herb comes in. He has two hookers with him, and like they start getting naked. He lays out some cocaine. He starts doing the cocaine in front of Marty, and Marty's like, I want to leave, but this is my room or whatever. I don't have nowhere to go. I don't know anything about the West Coast. So he lays there and I guess watches her take down these hookers and do cocaine all night. He said that was a long night.
It'd have been like, hey, you and your cocaine, you got to go. The bitches can stay.
Oh man. So have you guys ever had that experience? You ever been in On the road, in the hotel, somebody bring in some hookers and some cocaine.
Well, there was this one time. No, no, I've
The
never had an
only
experience like that.
the only hilarious hotel story that I could say on the road, and Chris Black was there. We ended up okay. So it was how many was it? I think it was four of
If
us.
you're a wife, turn this off right now.
No, it's not that bad. So we had to do some show up in Minnesota for one day, and then the next day we had a show like in the Green Bay area. So we decided that we would get a hotel on the way back, so that we could just spend the night instead of driving all the way back to Milwaukee, then going all the way back to Green Bay. So we come across some other friends of ours that also wrestled, and they had a carload of like 4 or 5 people. So they were like, well, we're just going to drive straight back. Now, keep in mind, we didn't leave this show until super late. 'Cause I think it was one of those shows that you had to go to like the after party or something to get paid or
Yeah.
some crap like that. So, us being concerned for them, we were like, you know what? Why don't we all just get a hotel room together? And so we went and got this hotel room. Now, let me tell you, it was two. They were supposed to be queen, but they were smaller than queens. I don't care what anybody says. So it was
So somebody was
three.
big
I think it
spoon.
was. I think it was. Oh, it wasn't even spoons. It was sandwiches. It was like 3 people per bed, 2 people between the bed, and then 2 people on the foot of the bed. Only one couple in that whole situation.
So y'all, so y'all was in there like the 5 heartbeats.
At the Saco de Dough.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. All
But
right.
no hookers, no cocaine.
Yeah, no. The only
Disappointingly,
time we saw cocaine was in one locker room.
I think Legacy Pro needs more cocaine. And I use the word more.
I don't know. I would fear for some guys who might be all coked out.
So they pretty much made the statement: as long as Herb was entertained, it was a good show. And when you're high on cocaine, pretty much almost anything is entertaining. And one of the things he did to entertain himself was that he made himself a character on the episode. You can actually kind of credit him for becoming one of the first on-screen authority figures as far as being involved in his product in a physical way before the Eric Bischoffs and the Vince McMahons of the world. They didn't really give him that credit on the Viceland series, but from some of the other things that I checked out, that was pretty much true. So
Yeah.
one of the things that he decided to do to promote his company was he decided to run the one and only pay-per-view. And it was entitled Beach Brawl, and it took place from Palomento, Florida. Sorry, and that was 1 hour away from the closest major city, which I believe was Tampa. And this was like a 5,000 to 8,000 seat arena, and they did not sell it out. They said they barely took in 500 paid people. They charged $15 on pay-per-view, $14.95 would be the exact figure, and they actually
0.01.
They had less than 10,000 buys.
No, they said between 100 and 1,000.
All right, well, they're still less than 10,000.
Way less.
So to say that it was abysmal would be an understatement.
Let me ask you a question, because maybe you found it, because I couldn't find it in any other research. So they kept saying on the documentary, on the Dark Side of the Ring, whenever they didn't sell out the building, it was that time and the other time we're probably going to get to, they said, oh, someone made a mistake. What the fuck was the mistake? Did you forget to promote? Like, they don't explain what the mistake was. Like, why was it so goddamn empty?
The mistake was they booked the wrong building. They should have got a dining room somewhere.
Dining room. Oh my goodness. Yeah, like the mistake was, I guess, being a money mark and not understanding how to actually operate a business.
But I mean, isn't that common sense? I'm going to throw a show near a major city and not some bumfuck town in an arena that nobody knows about.
You would think.
Well, it wasn't a town that nobody knew about. They said that the WWE actually ran television out of that same building. It was just the fact that nobody had heard about this company from the West Coast running a show down in Florida. That'd be like if Legacy Pro was like, "Hey, we're gonna go run a show in Dallas." Just
Well, I mean, you would think that
some
if you
random
were, he's a
weekend.
con artist, if you would think that you could secure a building like that, you would at least put in some money into promotion. Because I'm sorry, if some wrestling promotion, not WWE, decides to buy out what do they call the new place in Milwaukee?
Pfizer.
Yeah, there you go, the
Okay.
Pfizer Arena. People are going to notice because you have the bankroll to even book that building. That would just build some type of curiosity. Now, if Legacy, did a show at the what's it called, the Pfizer,
Five serve. Five
Pfizer,
serve.
okay, well, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. So if Legacy booked that building, we're gonna get attention because it's going to be like, who are these people? Because obviously they got some money back in them. So I'm not buying no one believed
Well,
who they were.
But you know what? The five serve is what, a 12,000 seat arena?
yeah.
So, but see, they'll probably get you a couple hundred people curious about it. But anybody else gonna be like, I don't even know what that is. Now I'm good.
Even with that, we saw that with Mondo Lucha. They ran the UW Panthers arena this year, and we see what they do at Turner Hall. They sell that out every year, and they did a double feature with the roller derby girls and Mondo
But,
Lucha wrestling, and they did the UW Panther arena. They didn't sell that out.
but did they do a lot of like local promotion? Like, did you see TV spots? Did you hear radio ads?
No, if you didn't know about it, I guess you didn't. You just didn't know. I saw a bunch of
That's
flyers.
and that's what I'm saying. I guess I don't understand why you would get a bigger arena and not promote. Sorry,
But
don't
also,
mean to
yeah,
talk about Mondo Lucha.
I guess you're right too, because he had people like Mick Foley and Superfly Jimmy Snuka. He had names on the card that could have
Yeah.
easily been promoted and been on news networks, which I know that was one of the things they said that they were supposed to do interviews and different things like that on television, and maybe that's where people messed up because those didn't happen. And this is also where Mick Foley made the comment when the arena wasn't sold out. I believe this was the event where him and Jimmy Snuka was like, well, we're going to just use the whole arena for our match then. And they fought into the stands where there was no seats. And they're like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, it's Herb show. Like, it doesn't matter. We can do what we want.
That's sad. You do a pay-per-view and there's only like 200 people there.
It was 550. I actually checked the actual figure. 550 paid. Maybe he should have comped the other,
Which is pretty good for an indie show.
maybe he should have comped the other 750 of 7,500 tickets.
Shit, that whole 500 was the townspeople. Which I guess that's a sellout. Shit.
And so since they couldn't sell it out, Herb owed a lot of money to the arena. He owed money to the performers. He owed money to his staff. And so with that being a disaster, he still had to pay all these people. So he began writing checks to all of the wrestlers, and the checks started bouncing. And when the checks started bouncing, the wrestlers refused to work. And so another event actually ended up having, I believe this was television, and the crew hadn't gotten paid. And so they were like, hey, before we even get started tonight, we need to get paid. And so he's like, all right, well, let's just finish setting up, and then we can go upstairs and talk in my office or whatever and get you guys paid. So I guess they finished setting up and getting everything ready. They're like, all right, so before we go live, we need to get paid. So he took him up to his office. He called his bank, put it on speakerphone, and the bank basically said, hey, yeah, this guy's got a lot of money here in this bank. And so the crew was like, all right, well, that's good enough for us, I guess. He has the money, so we're going to get paid. Little did they know that Herb Abrams had two different bank accounts, one with his money and one for top talent. Well, one with his money that he paid the top talent with, and then another bank account that had been closed or had inefficient funds or whatever the case may be, that he paid all of these other crew and staff and lower level performers out of, that these checks kept bouncing, which, correct me if I'm wrong. If you bounce a check, you get charged, right? If you try to cash a check and it bounces.
Yep.
Not only that, like
It's-
you only get so many times. A bank ought to pick up that you write checks. I think that's called check kiting.
Well, so here's the thing with that. So, as someone that works in the financial field, if you have one account that's like he had that apparently had millions of dollars in it, and you have another account where you keep bouncing checks, trust me, they gonna let you keep bouncing them checks just because
They get them
that bank
fees.
don't want to see that money walk out the door, and they gonna get the fees, which he might not even been getting fees because if you're part of private client or whatever your bank calls it, they don't charge you that stuff anyway.
Oh, I meant. Oh, okay. No, what I was talking about is if you let's say Chris Bratt wrote me a check, and I went to go cash it and it bounced, I would get charged, or does he get charged?
Oh, both of you get charged.
Oh, okay. That's what I was wondering.
Your bank will hit you with a return check fee.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So yeah, that would suck. And also part of the reason that he made sure to pay these guys, they were threatening to throw him off a balcony. Have you ever had anybody threaten to throw you off a balcony because you hadn't paid them?
No, I pay my people.
Dude, man, yeah. You can tell if you that mad, but you about to throw someone off a balcony. Yeah.
And this was before Vanilla Ice.
See, and they should have did it like the saying goes, beat him like he stole or owe you money.
And so now with him being threatened to be thrown off of a balcony, people not getting paid and wanting their money, Herb became very paranoid. Obviously, he was also doing a lot of cocaine. And they were saying he had a whole thing where he was thinking that his home was bugged and his hotel rooms were bugged and all these different things. And so he would rip up cushions and be checking everywhere to make sure that there wasn't any surveillance being taken on him or that the feds weren't after him or whatever the case may be. And people kept warning everybody not to take checks from him, And there was one moment where he had some hookers in a hotel room, and he was sitting there naked with them in his cowboy boots. He said he never took his cowboy boots off. He was the definition of knocking the boots. He had been listening to a lot of H-Town. And he tried to pay a hooker with a check, or pay some hookers with a check. It seemed like it was never just one. And she was like, no, you're going to pay me cash or whatever. She wouldn't take the check. And so then her pimps rushed in to try and beat the hell out of Herb. And so Herb takes off butt naked in cowboy boots and jumps out of the window. And he's running down the street. And I guess he gets to a payphone. He's calling people. He's like, I got some pimps chasing me. What should I do? And they're like, I don't know. Keep running or whatever. And nobody knew what to tell him. And so.
Oh, no, I'm gonna embarrass myself for a second.
You got chased by some pimps?
No, for some odd reason, I was like, damn, this nigga jumped out the window naked, but he still grabbed his cell phone. Nah, bro.
In 1991.
Cell phones have become just part of life now. I'm
not gonna lie, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, he was running. The way they made it sound in the documentary was that he was running down the street on the phone.
Right.
Like, I got some people chasing me.
I'm like, damn, dude, remember to grab his phone before he jumped out the window.
So, like I said, he was getting paranoid. Things were crumbling all around him. His empire he was trying to build. But he decided to take one more great stab, or should I say lackluster stab, at making the UWF successful. And so what he decided to do after seeing, I believe it was WrestleMania 8 from Caesar's Palace in the casinos, and he said that this showed that wrestling in casinos could be very profitable and marketable, and that wrestling was becoming more and more mainstream. So what he decided to do was book the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And on this show, he booked Jimmy Snuka. He had Mick Foley back. He had Sid Vicious. He had Dan Spivey, so he had the Twin Towers on there. He had a lot of the top talent that was available to him at this time on this show. And once again, checks didn't clear. They did not sell out this place. It was just another clusterfuck. I don't even think they even sold 300 tickets for this thing. But they said that Herb wasn't hurt with it. It seemed like he was enjoying himself the entire night, and even after it was over, saying, "Hey, we did a great job out there," like, or whatever. And they're like, I think that we were watching two different shows.
You know what? And the Blackjack Brawl can be found on YouTube. I found it. And man, Herb Abram was coked out of his mind that night.
So after the Blackjack Brawl, they said nobody really heard from Herb for several years until I believe it was 1996. And in that time, he had left LA and moved back to New York City. It appeared he had got himself clean and everything. They actually had footage from July 17th of 1996, which was the last known recording of Herb Abrams, and it was him visiting with some friends. And then they said on July 23rd of 1996, he was found dead in his offices. And the story varies depending on who's telling it or where you're getting it from. It was everything from that the only consistent thing is that he died naked with hookers and a baseball bat. Well, actually, I'm not even gonna say that. They say he died naked chasing hookers with a baseball bat because he was paranoid. He thought they had tried to rob him, or that he had gotten so high that he was just trying to attack them with the baseball bat. Another story is that he was found naked by the police chasing the hookers with a baseball bat and was arrested and hauled off to jail, and he died in jail. And the reenactments for this on the show were hilarious because they show every single way that these people have heard that he died. Everything from him having a heart attack in jail and falling to the floor, from him chasing after the hookers and running into the door and hitting his head and dying, from him being oiled up and covered in cocaine and passing out. They also said that he was sodomized by the cops and he died. There's no consistency. All we know is that he's dead, and there's also people on here who believe that he's not dead, that he faked his own death.
Regardless how he died, as B. Brian Blair said, he died doing what he loved: cocaine and hookers.
This man loved cocaine so much that he actually named his dog Cokie, and it was an all-white dog.
Cokie.
Him and Rick James.
Look, check this out.
Look, hold on. Before I let you interject real quick, I'm shocked that New Jack was not a part of UWF.
No, because they'd have been fighting over the cocaine.
He would stabbed him.
And New Jack would have been the one who killed him.
I think him and New Jack would have got along just fine. They're like, you like bitches and cocaine? I like bitches and cocaine.
Right.
He'd have probably been the most loyal person on the roster. He would have been his muscle. But they on his tombstone it said, "We deal, we cope, and we go on." I thought that was kind of nice. And then one of the lasting things that they asked Mick Foley, there's like, what would Herb be doing today? And Mick Foley says, time. He'd be doing time. The one constant in this entire episode, they knew it was a money mark, but nobody knew how he made his money. And so I had to go outside of Dark Side of the Ring. Like I said, this is an entertaining episode. I think this was one of the more fun episodes of the season, which we are getting ready to get into some of the darker stuff, especially when we get into the Owen Hart episode. But this was a fun episode, mainly due to the reenactments that they did for all the different things they were talking about, because this story is just outrageous. And I think it could be told in an hour. But when you take out all the commercials and everything, this episode was like 42 minutes long. Like, they kind of glossed over that he actually was married. He actually had an Asian wife, which is where a lot of people say they believe that his money was coming from. It was from his wife, actually, which was even crazier because all you hear about is him with cocaine and hookers. So where was his wife? Maybe she was the money mark. She was the real money mark. What do you think?
It's possible, but where she get her money from?
The Yakuza.
And that she would keep funding this cocaine and holes habit.
Also, yeah, I also just want to know, where did he get so much cocaine? This is the 90s. It's not the 80s.
They said he had two piles, one pile on each nightstand. Like, dude, you just leave your shit. Okay, so I guess I don't know too many people or anyone who does coke, but is it just casually laying around when y'all partying, like on the table in a pile?
It looks like you're
I think it does. I see the movies all the time.
It's like you're baking a cake just flowers, just
Get baked, all right. Shit.
right. So, like I said, this is a good episode. We try to keep it to what they kind of show in the episode. I did add in a couple of things that we got from outside sources. So, shout out to like Wrestling with Regret. Shout out to You Shoot interviews and wherever else we got some of our sources from. I know those are the ones that I looked at specifically. And shout out to YouTube because you can find a lot of these. Like you said, you can find the Blackjack brawl on there, and you could just see how bad a lot of this UWF stuff was. One thing that I started thinking about after watching this episode, though, is how he was taking shots at Vince McMahon and everything, and I was like, because one of the things they talk about was his belt that they had, and it had UWF printed on it, and it was like when you held it up the right way, it said FU, and he's like he loved holding the belt that way because he felt like it was a FU to Vince McMahon. But then I was also thinking, I was like, man, the WWE got the Universal Championship. Is that a FU to Herb Abrams?
I like that.
Vince would have to care for that.
Vince probably don't even remember this shit.
You don't have to care necessarily. Somebody could have brought it up to him, like, "Hey, you remember that crazy guy that said he was gonna run the West Coast?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that short guy with cowboy boots. What was his name called?"
I think they're more thinking WWE Universe, the Universal title.
I know that. I'm kind of joking. I'm half joking, but half realistic because we know how petty Vince McMahon is.
Yeah, true that.
That he would do
That's
something.
what we call an Easter egg.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that's been lost to the sands of time. So what were your takeaways from the episode, and what did you think of the episode, especially after doing some outside research? Do you think that this was a good coverage of Herb Abrams and the UWF, or do you think that they could have done more? And
well, there's two things I want to bring up. First of all, I would love to see this be into like some kind of biopic, like a movie. I mean, they're talking about doing Hulk Hogan's. Fuck Hulk Hogan. Let's do Herb Abrams' story. I would love to see it play out. I mean, this is a very interesting story. Like you said, I feel like the episode went by really quick. I want to know more. I want to learn more. Like I said, I went back and started watching the Blackjack Brawl. I kind of want to see what this company was about, because if it was as outrageous as they made it seem, this is something I want to look further into. Now, I've come across the name UWF before, and I've seen clips of Mick Foley mostly, but I thought it was just one of those small territories that just kind of died off. I didn't know the backstory of it. All this information is brand new to me, and I need to find out more. But the second thing I want to say is, let this be a lesson, and this has played itself out a couple times. It seems like whenever a company tries to compete with WWE, WWF, whatever, they end up failing. Every single last one of them. WCW, Dino Bravo's company, the UWF. TNA almost completely fell apart, but they're still holding on. But there was some management changes and shit. But the main thing is, anytime you directly try to take out Vince or take on the WWE, you fail. So AEW, continue doing what you're doing and just try to be AEW. Do not try to compete with Vince. Do not try to take him out. Do you, and the fans will come. Your focus cannot be, let's take down Vince McMahon. New Japan has never tried to take on Vince McMahon. They've existed in their own bubble. So that's what I got out of it. I'm just like, damn, all these people trying to take out Vince ends up taking themselves out. Let that be a lesson.
I got the same thing out of it. I also got that cocaine does not mix in wrestling well. So let's not try to make that happen, guys. Just stick with the what they call it, the devil's grass.
Yes.
Young Jeezy, you have my personal invitation to the next Legacy Pro show. We need the return of the Snowman.
Just stick with that. But you know what? You got to give people credit. At least give them an A for effort. They tried, and it they failed. But hey, how did they know they were going to fail? Now, after about a show in or two, he probably should have contacted some outside help. Like, hey, I got these arenas. They really not filling up. My talent is showing up on somebody else's TV the next day. Like all that stuff. Like he should have been trying to find workarounds for. But I understand that the cocaine and the hookers kind of messed up his train of thought. But at least one of the hookers could have been like, you know what? I really want you to keep your money so you can keep paying for me. Maybe you should get some outside help. I don't know.
You know what? He would have been better off bankrolling a promotion that was already up and running, already had a reputation, and try to take them to the next level.
That's what he wanted to do. That's what he wanted to do with Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon laughed him out of the room.
But Vince is, you don't go there. I mean, he could have went to AW. He could have went to AWA. He could have went to.
Yeah, he was one of those people that's like, look, none of that's good enough. I got to be at the top. The cream.
He could have went to. He could have went to Eastern Championship Wrestling with bankroll.
Well, he was on the West Coast.
Oh, I'm sorry. He didn't really actually want to be in the business. He's a fucking con man.
I don't think he ever even expected to make money with wrestling. He just wanted to take on Vince. Just basically go to the top. I don't think he obviously he didn't get in it to make money.
He was a mark that got caught up in the glitz and glamour of the wrestling business, and he partied harder than any pro wrestler.
You sure about that?
That's true. I can't really say that.
The drugs didn't kill him. How many wrestlers do we know?
When you have pro wrestlers, you're like, damn, dude. Like
that's also the funny thing in a lot of these episodes. I kind of hate a lot of these guys that act like they weren't doing that shit along with him.
Right.
Like
I was just watching.
He just sat in the corner and watched him fuck them hookers.
Yeah.
All that cocaine snorted itself.
Like that's every single episode. The only person that's been honest on any of these shows has been Jake the Snake Roberts. Like, yeah, I got high as fuck. That's why I love Jake the Snake.
That's already known.
Yeah, but still, I just hate on every single one of those. Like yeah, he had a bad cocaine habit, and we all knew about it. I never did it. I didn't do that shit.
Kayfabe.
Like you just know selling the cocaine, huh? You just talk like that normally, huh? That's your real voice you was using back then. Your teeth wasn't locked up, huh? That's why you couldn't open your mouth, huh? Why I sound like Juvenile, huh? Back that ass up, huh?
I mean, let you tell it. People said that they've seen Hogan in the back doing plenty cocaine, so that was just part of the business, apparently.
Hey, that's part.
He looked like he liked some blow.
That's part of those vitamins.
Why do you think they did all them crazy ass promos? Shit, wide-eyed to the motherfucker.
What do you think Hulking Up was? They had a whole name for how much he was doing.
I can see a.
That's how he came up with the gimmick. Oh man, you gotta do that in the ring. That works.
Let me tell you something, Mean Gene.
Can you imagine if some of the guys now was on cocaine in WWE now? What that shit would look like?
Ricochet.
Oh God. Montez Ford.
Well, he got whatever's in that cup. Nia Jax on cocaine.
Jesus, she'd kill everybody.
Whoa. Yeah, keep that away from her and Sasha Banks, please.
Just wait till
Seth Rollins.
Just wait till Nia Jackson and Sasha Banks have their death match in WWE. And it's gonna be a regular match, but it's just gonna be a death match.
No, it's gonna be career versus career.
But anyways, yeah, entertaining episode. I think I've said this the past couple critiques though, that beyond the Chris Benoit episode, it feels like a lot of information in these episodes. These episodes seem rushed now.
Yeah.
And I would even say beyond New Jack and the Chris Benoit, I feel like season 2, these episodes aren't as well laid out. They blow through a lot of information. They introduce a lot of talking heads. And I think they get away from kind of telling a more concise story. Obviously, it's television and it's their show. They're going to tell the story that they want to tell. But I think that they can tell a more complete story if they cut out a little bit of the fluff or maybe a little bit of the reenactments. Especially like as entertaining as the reenactments were in this show, I would guess that it were maybe like 10 minutes of the show were reenactments of covering what they were meant talking about at the time. But I feel like that could have been filled with other information that we picked up from outside sources on some of the actual inner workings of the company.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely could have made this a two-part episode or two-part.
Right.
Because there's a lot of information they could have covered.
Right. The most interesting thing, like I said, is just how charismatic I guess this guy was, and even though he screwed a lot of people over, and I guess you could say that for a lot of things. I'm pretty sure that you guys have worked with people where maybe, like you said, the gate wasn't what it was supposed to be or whatever. You took less money and maybe you came back and worked for that person again or whatever. But it seems like even though he screwed these people over, they all had a good time. They enjoyed their time with him because they were still crying over him. There was no hard feelings or anything like that. I guess they knew like he had a problem, and pretty much everybody on here from the beginning, it seems like every single story they told, he didn't hide who or what he was from the people that he was working with. Like he would show up to the hotel room on your interview or your audition or whatever you want to classify it as with cocaine and hookers, and he would fuck them hoes in front of you, and he would do the cocaine in front of you, so you knew what the business was. So you was either gonna get paid by cash or you was gonna get paid by cocaine. One of the two C's. Well, actually 3 C's. Coochie, cocaine, or cash. What do you want?
Man. Then dude is, I can't get over this shit. Dude is 5'0".
Yeah, which I'm interested. Like Mick Foley kept working for him, and like maybe he was one of those people that was on that other checking account. But I feel like Mick Foley kind of lies a little bit about like you was in ECW where cocaine and drugs were rampant. You were over here in this organization where cocaine and drugs were rampant, and you didn't do none of that shit.
Mick Foley doesn't strike me as the type of guy that would fuck around with cocaine, though. He genuinely seems like a good person.
Well, just because you do cocaine don't mean you're a bad person either.
Well, you know what I'm saying. Like, he seems too straight-laced.
Maybe. That high pain tolerance had to come from somewhere.
Shh.
The devil's lettuce.
That was his vice. Because I don't know him like that, but he doesn't seem like the type that was a big drinker or smoker either.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I'm not necessarily saying that he did do cocaine. I'm not trying to get in trouble or anything like that. But like I said, I just feel like a lot of these people when they are in these documentaries and they're like, oh yeah, all of this stuff was going on around me at this time. And it's like, and what was you doing? Like, how was you able to stay in that room for as long as you was in that room and not partake in any of it? Because we know what Jimmy Snuka was on. We know why Jimmy Snuka was there. We know how Jimmy Snuka was getting paid.
And now we find out Jimmy Snuka was working with this company. We know how he got. Yeah, we know which payment he took.
He's like,
he took the cocaine and the hookers.
He's like, you want some coochie cash or some cocaine? He's like,
he wanted all.
He's like, shoot, what you got the most of? No, he's like, what you got the most of? Cocaine. He's like, all right.
Swear to God. Again, season 2, all about the cocaine.
Which makes it interesting on where they could possibly take the next season. In season 3, they got to tackle Vince McMahon. They got to figure out a way to. I think that's the only way that they can really go. I think the UWF is one of the craziest stories that they can tell. I know we're not at the end of the season yet, and we're gonna end this. But what is a story that's not on the docket for this season so far that you would like to see told in season 3?
I would actually like them to get into Dynamite Kid. I'd like them to talk about. Well, I don't know if there's any dirt on Rick Rude, but
Xavier Mustafa.
Oh no, I thought Chris Black still has some more he was gonna spit out.
One more, probably just because he might be open to discuss it. Kurt Angle with his pill addiction.
Yeah, he
But
has been
those would
fired
be
by
my
WWE
picks.
now, so he could come out and be open and honest.
Yeah.
I would like to see one on Hogan. I think that would be a good one. And I'd like to see one on Jerry Lawler.
Or his son, Brian Christopher.
No, I want to
Yeah.
know Jerry Lawler. What was really going on down there in Tennessee?
But yeah, that just made me think. Yeah, Brian Christopher is another one that was kind of tragic. What's his name? Pillman. I don't know if there's any type of dark side to that, but Brian Pillman would be a good story to tell.
Yeah, I think they might just actually do an entire and I know Brian Pillman was in the WWE or WWF when he died, but I wonder if they'll just do a whole thing on the ECW. But it seems like they're trying to stay away from that because WWE owns that, so they're trying to do as the stories they can tell without getting sued, the stories that are out there in the open already, like Brawl for All and Montreal Screwjob. It's not a whole bunch of research that you got to do, or a whole bunch of dirt and stuff that you can get sued over. So I don't know, but all right, you guys want to give out your social medias? We'll get up out of here.
You can catch me at Xavier Mustafa on Facebook and Twitter. You can also catch my other podcast, XM Cinema, on wherever you get your podcast fix. And Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Or Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
You can catch me on Instagram and Facebook at The Natural Chris Black, and on Twitter at _natural_CB.
And you can obviously find us here on YouTube. Make sure, like I said at the beginning of the show, that you give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you're notified whenever we upload new content here on the YouTube channel. Chris Black, you want to do me a favor real quick? Look up what the next episode of Dark Side of the Ring is so you can get on that information. Also,
next one is going to involve Hawk,
okay.
the Road Warriors.
All right. So you guys have that coming up here on YouTube. And also you can find us wherever you get your podcast from. Just search Saturday Night Slamcasters or hashtag Come Get Slam, wherever you get your podcast from. Also, you can find us you can find me on Twitter at SlamcasterTE78, and you can find us also over there on Facebook. Make sure you go over there and give us a follow and a like. Other than that, keep on listening to us. Thank you guys for being here with us. Holla at your boys. We up out of here. Peace.